Welcome to the Easier Way to Sell presentation of Close the Deal Without Selling. Here's your host and developer of the Easier Way to Sell, Ike Krieger.
Hey, this is Ike Krieger. Welcome back. Okay, so what are we going to cover in this episode? The following question came up actually twice over the last week. Once was in a conversation with a colleague, and the other time was a question that was posed on LinkedIn, the social media network. I think you'll find this of great interest because it has to do with one of the weaknesses that I see in many of the companies that I have dealt with in the past. And in my conversations, I feel that the challenge still exists for most employers, and that challenge is to find the best hiring practices. We'll talk about that more in a moment. How you spend your time. I think you're going to be blown away by the statistics that I'm going to share with you about how most of us spend our time. And finally, we're going to have a conversation with two of my longtime friends, Sharon and Hank Uloff of Uloff Creative Marketing Solutions. I think you'll find some of the information they have for you very helpful, especially the part of how you make a decision on which connections you accept in social media. Let's get right to it. I was having a conversation with fellow podcaster Michael Roberts for his Small Business Celebration podcast. And his podcast explores the differences and similarities along with the needs and wants of successful business owners and entrepreneurs. And Michael said that one of the biggest challenges that most businesses seem to have is finding a best practice for hiring. Basically, what's the best way to hire new help? We were specifically talking about sales and salespeople, so that's the direction our talk headed. Most salespeople, when applying for a job, tend to provide a why I'm right for the job presentation with a prospective employer, and that presentation may be the best one that they ever give to that person. But in most cases, they're being asked questions that force them into a specific communications perspective. The interview questions are usually the same. Tell me why I should hire you. Tell me what sets you apart from other people applying for the job. Tell me your strengths. Tell me your weaknesses. What prompted you to apply for this job? What's your experience with what we do? Do you know what we do? And on and on and on and on. But there is a flip side. There's a reframe for these hiring challenges. First, you, the employer, may want to take the responsibility for your less than stellar hires. After all, a job interview is probably one of the most important activities that you as an owner or manager of a business has to deal with. The ramifications of a poor hire are far-reaching, yet some interviewers still go about the interview process completely wrong. Now, if you've been through at least a couple of interviews, you will have experienced the following. 90% of the time you spend with the person doing the hiring is filled by that person telling you all about the company and how wonderful it is to work there. You'd almost believe that they believe that their job is to convince you that this is a great place for you to work and settle down in. And this is usually before they ask you any questions about your character, your skills, or your experience. As an interviewer, your job is to disqualify someone rather than the other way around. Your job as an interviewer is to get information, not give it. You'll find your best hires when you're clear on the strengths you're seeking in a successful sales rep. What are you, the employer, trying to find in your next hire? You're looking for someone who can be trained or is already capable of representing your product or service in the most powerful way. In other words, you want them to be a surrogate or even more effective than you in the sales process. You want them to do things right, and you want them to do things right on the first try. Well, how do you find out if someone has the capabilities or a skill set that allows them to be let loose upon your most valuable asset, your prospects and your clients? Well, you ask. You use the easier way to sell approach and ask the questions that uncover whether your prospective sales candidate is an effective problem solver. After all, your entire business is based on the fact that there's a problem or a challenge in society that your product resolves. To be successful, you must identify the market in which those people with that challenge exist and solve their problem. And the question then relates solely to the ease with which the person you're interviewing can adapt to the role of an effective problem solver in your marketplace. If you want to find out the ability, the capability, and the character of your prospective employee or salesperson, I would want to know how they handle the type of problems that usually pop up in the day-to-day operation of your business. I owned a piano tuning and repair business in the late 1970s and early 1980s, and I created and followed a very specific business model. My company became the provider of wholesale piano services to major piano outlets all over Southern California. And during those years, there were a lot of big-time piano stores. Pianos were even sold in major department stores like Sears and, for those of you old enough to remember, the May Company. This was pre-digital, and the only way to play a keyboard was to own or rent a piano or occasionally an organ. I secured these wholesale contracts well before I created the easier way to sell, but as I look back, I seem to have channeled my future ideas and followed my own advice, and here's how it went. I'd set up an appointment at a piano outlet with a piano store manager and ask this question. You know those calls you get from customers about how the work that was done on their piano wasn't completed correctly or didn't live up to their customer standards? Well, how valuable would it be if you never received those kinds of calls again? I came to recognize the little gleam in their eye as they checked off that persistent problem in their mind. They were pleased and relieved that a registered craftsman technician, who was also a businessman, was in charge of their customer satisfaction. With this process, I built up the largest piano tuning and repair business in Southern California. And from the beginning, I knew that I couldn't handle all of the tunings myself. The business plan I put together worked similarly to the service department of an auto dealership. New pianos would arrive. They needed work to be done before they could be shown to a prospective customer. Then the pianos would get tuned on the floor of the piano store. And once the pianos were sold, they would be retuned in the home and serviced. That was the job I promised. That was the job that would, if done properly, trigger 0 calls to the store manager. Well, I needed more surrogate technicians. And when I interviewed prospective tuner technicians, I would ask them this one question. How many times are you willing to go back to a piano in a home to make things right? If they said as many times as necessary, I thanked them and filed away their name. When I asked that question and the response was, I do it right the first time, I knew that this was my kind of person. When you interview an applicant, I suggest you have a list of 2 or 3 of the most persistent problems that are facing your business or have faced your sales staff in the past. Ask this person how they would deal with these situations. Examine their problem-solving skills. Examine the way they think a problem out. Ask them what options they might put in place that would make that task easier. Find out what their biggest gripe is when they work as a salesperson. You get my drift. You have their resume in front of you. You know whether or not they're even a candidate for you to ask the questions above. But if you want to know whether or not someone is right for a position in your company, figure out what problems you solve, what problems you face, and ask them for input or an opinion on both. Let's close with 2 things. 1, identify and cherish effective problem solvers. And 2, remember, questions are the answers. I've heard it said that if 24 hours a day isn't enough for you to get your work done, you need to work nights. Now, I realize that that's a joke, but an efficiency expert named Michael Fortino offered the following dismal scenario for the average life lived in these United States based on the amount of time that you spend on certain activities. And here they are. In your lifetime, you'll spend 7 years in the bathroom, 6 years eating, 5 years waiting in line, 3 years in meetings, 2 years playing telephone tag, 8 months opening junk mail, and 6 months sitting at red lights. And for the next entry in this bizarre list, I went online and found the current statistic, and that statistic is you're going to spend 6 years staring at your smartphone. You'll get interrupted 73 times a day, take an hour of work home, read less than 5 minutes, talk to your spouse for 4 minutes, exercise less than 3 minutes, and play with your kids for 2 minutes. Yes, time management in all aspects of your life needs to be reassessed. Today's conversation is with two folks that I've known for a quarter of a century, and I think you'll find what they share with you to be very helpful. Hank and Sharon Uloff run a profitable business coaching business, and I'll let them tell you about it. Right now, here are my friends, Hank and Sharon Uloff. I've known our next guest for, I figured it out, 2 centuries. 2 millennium.
Well, parts of.
Well, it may have been parts of, but how is that anywhere near as dramatic as 2 millennium? Oh, parts of 2 millennium. I knew them parts of 2 days. And literally over 25 years, and I've watched their success over that time in their businesses, their partnership, and their marriage. And so without further ado, and I've never figured out what more ado is, let me introduce Hank and Sharon Uloff from Uloff Creative Marketing Solutions. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's with ado is just like, is there such a thing as being whelmed? You can be overwhelmed or underwhelmed, but is there just a status quo?
I'm just whelmed.
I'm whelmed.
For all of you who wanted to bolster your communication skills, through this conversation, you're starting to get a taste of what's in store.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your business, and then I'd like to find out the biggest challenge you have in getting your message across.
You have challenges?
Nah.
Yeah, I know you have few, but if you could pick one over the years.
So to answer your first part of your question, we are business coaches. We work with small business owners in the 4 areas that they tend to struggle with most: marketing, sales, human resources, and public speaking.
I'll give you a story about what one of our challenges were, and we had to fix it. We were asked to be on someone's broadcast show. They wanted to interview us, as it were. So we were asked to be on, and I sent them our bios, and I sent them information about us, and it kept coming back. The communication kept coming back to us. Great, Hank, we will see you on, and it was all based toward me. And I finally said, you do realize that this is a Sharon and Hank thing? And the comment that came back was, well, why are you the only one on the book cover then? Because on the first marketing book that I wrote, it was just me, and it was communicated poorly that we are a team. And the reason that happened, of course, was that we thought there would be other books that each of us would write, as opposed to all of them that we would both co-write. Wrote.
The meaning of your communication is the response that you get.
Yes.
We tell all of our private coaching clients when we do our download, let's look at everything you're doing marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we look for are uses of stock photos. Because people will think when they come to your website and they see those stock photos that that's the folks they get. And what's interesting is most often those are like the law firms where they'll have, 10, 20 something sharp, gorgeous human beings in suits. And it looks like, oh, that's the team that's going to defend us.
They're in a kiosk at Costco.
Yeah, where it's one guy in his 50s that doesn't want to leave the office and wants to just talk to his clients on the phone, which is fine. But they will look at who's presenting, and they think there is a disconnect in the communication. You're right.
And when there's that disconnect, you lose that trust factor. You've probably talked about this before, right? Right? People do business with people that we know, like, and trust. And if someone goes to your website and they see that team of lawyers and then they find out, well, no, it's really just you've lost their trust. You've already broken that trust, and the chance of them coming back is slim.
So your biggest challenge was communicating that the two of you were a team. That's the one you wish to share. Is that correct?
Well,
how did you solve that outside of your books?
Throughout our website, you see plenty of both of us, and we make sure that we are known as a brand of two.
The best husband and wife team in the biz.
Yeah, I'll give you a challenge we do have, and I'm working on this right now.
Yeah.
If we're on stage and we're speaking about marketing or sales, and there's a photographer that's taking pictures, we always have to make sure, hey, the only photos that are usable are the ones where you get us both. And because if there's a photo of just me on stage or just Sharon on stage, it's completely not usable.
And what challenge are you finding in speaking to the photographers that are doing the shoot?
We have to either move them around during the shoot, or we have to notice them. When we just spoke in Las Vegas, and the organizational photographer came in, and I sort of, Sharon and I just sort of looked and waved at the photographer, and we made sure that we both got in the shot while we were speaking. And we call it out to the audience. We say, hey, give us a second. This is part of the branding. And we point it out.
I like that. It's hard to get upset with someone for not telling them what you didn't want them to do. I have a question that is right in your wheelhouse, because I was fortunate enough to attend one of your workshops recently. And one of the things that you offered hit me powerfully, and that was how you sort your connection requests. So I had a friend of mine from LinkedIn who the other day wrote, I've got 1,000 requests sitting and waiting, and I don't know who to accept. Can you give me some helpful guidance? So I said, aha, I have someone who can give you some helpful guidance. You're going to have to listen to the podcast to get us. So if you could briefly go over your guidelines for accepting a contact, I think we would all find that very helpful.
My go-to is, if they aren't your ideal client or a potential referral partner for that ideal client, then I don't accept them.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I used to just accept every friend request that came on Facebook, and I quickly hit on the personal side, quickly hit the limit. And it took me a year to then go through and say, to wean out the people that were the troublemakers and not the possible,
Right. Or fake profiles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you do have to put a little work in on that.
You have to be clear on your outcome in terms of your ideal client. And that was one of the things that you both mentioned that I found so interesting, is your process for identifying that person, metaphorically speaking. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, I don't know if it's a metaphor. I click on their profiles. I take a look at what they're doing.
Well, it's either the clients that you like to work with most. So look at who your current client list is. Who do you like to work with the most? And, identify some common demographics.
There you go.
Male, female, how far away they are, what occupation they're in, those kinds of things. And also look at, okay, well, that's who you like to work with. Now, is that group also the most profitable? Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. So sometimes the most profitable client is a different basket. So look at the same demographics of that client.
And most people aren't taught about finding their ideal clients because they're so excited about their product that their clientele, their marketplace is everyone. And
everybody wants to buy my widget.
Yeah. And when your marketplace is everyone, as you'll hear over and over again in life, it's really no one.
In our small business breakthrough bootcamp, we have a slide that I really like because it really speaks to this everyone. The slide shows 5 generations of women, right? From a new driver to great grandma. And if they're living in a major city, right, like Los Angeles, we could make an argument that they all need a car, right? Public transportation sucks, and we don't necessarily want everyone using Uber, maybe. So, okay, everyone needs a car. But even if that's true, that everyone needs a car, those 5 generations, they don't all need the same kind of car. They're not even looking for the same features. There's the way that you're going to speak to them and attract them to your particular model of car is going to be different. So, okay, let's make an argument that everyone is your client. You still need to break it down so that you're speaking directly to that particular target as opposed to thinking you're speaking to everyone, which means you're not speaking to anyone, actually.
And this is the focus that, from what I heard from you, that you just turn around and say, okay, if that's the car that I'm selling, then this is my ideal market. And that's who you accept, or people who can get you into that market when they ask for a connection. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely. You know, if you were to look at our private coaching clients, there's 3 different generations and about to be a 4th. We don't relate to them the same way. They don't need the same things from us. You know, if you look at baby boomers, for example, let's just take a look at our generation. When we were little, we were handed that Fisher-Price, phone with the big plastic buttons and the wheels. And you look at millennials and Zers, and they were handed iPhones by their parents.
Yeah.
So the relationship to technology is different across the spectrum of our clients. So we work with them differently and teach them different things, and frankly attract them differently.
Well, that brings up my next question. And what communication skill do you find the most helpful, both in your clients and in yourselves?
Well, I'm sorry, I was listening to you.
What?
Nice.
Listening. What's the secret of comedy? You have to understand that each generation has different traits or ways they want to be communicated with, and making sure that you are listening to what they say and you are giving them what they need.
And you give them a way to communicate with you that works best for them, right? We see a lot of business owners, well, I only communicate via email because I don't know, whatever.
Oh, well, I have an example of that happened this week. At a networking group that we were in, an allergist was a guest. And the very next day we met someone that was having allergies, and I said, would you mind if I connect the 2 of you by email just so you can have a talk? And then I went back to the allergist card and her website, and there's no way to connect them by email, because on her website she says she prefers to talk to them on the phone. I'm like, well, I understand that you want to make a sale, but if that's how this person wants to be communicated with, because it's the most friendly way or easiest for her, then why don't you be open to giving them all those ways?
I dwell on clients that to meet their prospects at their model of the universe, find out on what channel they receive and process information most effectively, and then meet them at that model. Because if you don't, you're going to get, but I thought you meant.
Yeah. the first couple still own a promotional product company, and we sell that stuff still.
When I interviewed you 25 years ago on my radio show, that's what you were doing.
Wow. And the first couple of times I had a client send an order through Facebook Messenger, I was pissed. And I was like, wait a minute, hey dummy. They're sending you money.
Accepted in any form that they want to communicate it.
Maintain your outcome, not your position.
Yeah, I had to have a discussion with myself.
Yeah, really. Hey, genius, come here.
Yeah, I didn't use the word genius. So I thank you for that.
I just finished reading a couple of business communication books, one called Nonviolent Communication and the other one called Give and Take. And it was talking about, how relationships are built and formed and what the best questions are to ask in those relationships in order to maintain, I guess, sanity. When you as a team reach an impasse in terms of how you want to do something or go about it, not to get into, hey, you never take me anywhere, and I'm talking about Hank saying that to you. How do you handle that as human communicators? What have you found that works best for you guys?
Well, I think we have a few ways. It sort of depends on what the topic is. It also depends on how important is that thing, whatever that thing is, to one or the other of us. For example, if whatever it is really important to one of us and the other one just doesn't care that much, then fine. The person to whom it's really important, you win. Fine.
Yep.
Whatever.
Absolutely.
If we're really both, no, I think this is the right way, and he's like, no, I think mine's the right way, then we need a third person. Right. And, we have business coaches, right? Therapists have therapists, and doctors have doctors, and coaches have coaches. So we have coaches, and we've deferred to a third party. What do you think? Give us and sometimes they have a third opinion. It's not either of us, actually. They're like, well, actually, I think it's this. And we go, oh, we didn't even think that. Well, you're right. So it kind of depends on what the topic is.
Well, thank you for not getting too detailed into family life there.
What would you like for dinner is not the hill I'm willing to die on.
One of our former mentors has a really good line, and we use it regularly. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? Whoops. Or do you want to be rich? Yeah. It sort of depends on, is this a relationship thing or is it a sales thing? So, there is a time to be right? Okay, I don't want my kid running out into the street. I'm going to be right by pulling him back quickly before the car hits him. So there is a time to be right, but there's also a time when, like Hank said, is this the hill I'm willing to die on? And what I want for dinner is just not. I'd rather be happy than right.
We talk about the difference in language, and for us, it's the would you rather spend time doing it or invest time doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a harder one for me. I always catch myself on that one because spending it, the phrase is just easier.
We're Americans. We want it all, and we want it now.
Yeah. So the biggest challenge that they come to us with, it's an online challenge.
They're really good at what they do. It used to be that they could just hang a shingle and their ideal client would show up. And now they're like, okay, that's not really working anymore. And I don't really get this whole online thing.
So we solve that challenge a lot. Well, and in fact, we have a brand new client. And when we looked at at first glance, their digital footprint, their website looked amazing. And then we started digging down in the language. And I know that language is important to you. And the social media footprint is almost non-existent. And we have to improve that. And we have to improve how their website speaks to their potential clients. And that is a challenge for a lot of our clients.
Tell us how we can get involved with your programs, with your business, how to make contact with you.
Okay, so we are very easy to find. We're on most of the major social media networks at Uloft Creative. You can go to Yuloff, that's YULOFF, or any number of other different ways you want to spell it, yuloffcreative.com. If you are listening to this podcast, we'll give you something for free. We'll give you 2 things for free. If you'd like 30 minutes of assistance, go to freemarketingconsultation.com. That's called branding, Ike. You give them you make your URL what you're giving them.
Yeah, that's news to me.
Let's put that one out there. Freemarketingconsultation.com. There's a really easy little assessment. You take that, you get into our calendar. Or we do small business breakthrough boot camps twice a year in 3 cities. And if you want a free ticket to that, send an email to info@yuloffcreative, and we'll send you the link for that.
Excellent. Now, I have listeners, and as a matter of fact, you and I may be in communication with someone in Indonesia or Russia or Japan or Europe. They can reach you at these same points and be able to take advantage of you as you go international?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Excellent. I just want all of you, my friends, to go visit Hank and Sharon, or should I say Sharon and Hank, can really help you guide your communications from a business standpoint. I talked to you about, straight back and forth human being communication, how it works in selling, how it works other ways. This is about how it works in life. I've watched their business grow and grow, and they have a lot of things they can teach you. In closing, is there anything that you would like to say to our listeners?
Sharon's always right. What's the secret of good communication?
Yes.
Just take our tagline, and it's what we use, and put this as on your whiteboard. If everything happens for a reason,
be the reason things happen.
I love it.
Put that on your whiteboard and live that for a little bit, and I'll give you one more thing. When you listen to all of Ike's podcasts, when he has an idea, when he shares something with you that you think is cool, go into immediate action. I'm sure in every podcast you're giving them great ideas. Put it into action immediately. Don't wait and say, I think I'll do that later. Pause the podcast, take the first steps, go back into the podcast, and I think you'll get more from it.
Great. Well, I appreciate that.
You're going to share a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And it's been a real kick sharing the information with everybody, now finding out everybody around the world. And I'm doing my best to find like-minded people in the field of communications and business that can make an impact on our listeners. They can really help them be better tomorrow than they are today. One of the big challenges is that we're nurtured until we're a certain age. I don't know about some of the other countries that we reach, but here in the United States, until you're 18, you're sheltered, and then you're told to go out into the business world and be successful. So as much information as you can get, it's so important, because we're just not taught when we're children. And when you get out into the real world, as Hank mentioned earlier, these skills are paramount.
Yes.
Yeah? You think so?
That's good. That's
solid. Again, thank you so much. I believe that everybody's going to benefit from this conversation, and I thank you for being so candid. So
you put a smile on my face, man.
Excellent. Well, it was our intention to put a smile on a lot of people's faces, but you smiling is a good sign. So with that, I'd like to say goodbye to both of you. Goodbye, Sharon. Goodbye, Hank. Thank you for being on the Close the Deal Without Selling podcast. All right, that brings us to the end of today's episode, and I'd like you to remember that you can adjust your hiring practices so you're uncovering whether or not the prospect is the type of person that has the capability to solve the type of problems that you and your business experience. Second, I'd also like you to take a look at how you're spending your time. I realize that all of us have to continue doing some of the things that are on that list. It's just part of being human. But some of the others, you may have more control over them than you thought. Take a look at it. See what you might be able to do to free up some valuable time to work on your business. And finally, Hank and Sharon's tip on how to discover which of your contact requests are in your best interest. Are those contact requests strategic? Or are you just happy when somebody goes, "Oh, please be my friend"? There really is a difference when you choose the right connections. This is Ike Krieger. See you next time.